Well, here we are. The next morning after it was announced that Caitlin Clark would not be returning this season, something that I think most of us pretty much knew for maybe at least the last couple of weeks. I heavily suspected it for the last, if I'm being real, last month. Although I kept kind of holding out hope because, well, I wanted a reason to keep watching these games. And that's why the Indiana Fever has gotten dogged out as a conversation and a agreement that would have happened between the Fever organization and I assume Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA. We don't want to mess these ratings up now. We don't want to mess those ratings up now, do we? Let's make it look like she's going to come back. So I knew there was going to be a lot of reaction today and last night, overnight. And Amber Cox, the CEO and general manager for the Fever, has released a statement on Twitter X. And it has gotten quite the response from Caitlin Clark fans.
That wasn't just a random theory. That was the truth finally breaking the surface. What you just heard is the core of a calculated deception, a conspiracy of greed that used a young superstar as a pawn, her injury as a marketing tool, and millions of loyal fans as collateral damage. The official story is that Caitlin Clark's body simply ran out of time, but that's the story they want you to believe. The real story, the one pieced together from insider whispers, furious fan accounts, and the league's own suspicious actions, is far darker. This is the story of how the WNBA and the Indiana Fever faked a comeback to save their bottom line. They sold you hope that they knew was a lie, and tonight, we're exposing every last detail. This is the story they don't want you to know. Stick with me, because we have the proof. It all started with whispers, then confusion, then outright suspicion. After playing in just 13 games, Caitlin Clark was sidelined with what was described as a groin injury and bone bruise complications. From that moment on, the flow of information from the Indiana Fever and the WNBA slowed to a trickle. There was never a clear timeline, never a concrete update. It was always day to day, always we're hopeful, always just enough to keep the dream of her return alive. But why? Why the vagueness? For the answer, you don't look at the injury report. You look at the balance sheets. When Caitlin Clark wasn't on the court earlier this season, nationally televised game ratings collapsed by a catastrophic 55%. The Fever's own viewership dropped by 53%. Ticket prices for the All-Star Game, an event she couldn't even attend, plummeted by 48% the moment the news broke. The message was crystal clear. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's golden era was over before it began. They were facing financial devastation. So, they made a decision, a cold, calculated decision. If they couldn't have the real Caitlin Clark on the court, they would sell the idea of Caitlin Clark. They would sell the hope of her return.
The WNBA ratings' worst nightmare just came true because it was just announced that Caitlin Clark will be out for the rest of the season. She's only played 13 games this season, and her most recent injury, which happened back in July, was a groin injury. The craziest part about all of this has been the reporting around her injury. The team has never given her a timetable for return, and literally up until today, the team had been reporting that she was still trying to get back on the court this season. The Fever only have 3 regular season games left in the season before playoffs. Some fans were even speculating that they've just been stringing fans along the whole time.
The worst nightmare wasn't the injury. The worst nightmare was the loss of revenue. And the craziest part wasn't the rehab, it was the strategy. Fan theories immediately exploded, claiming the Fever and the league were intentionally stringing everyone along. On social media, the anger was raw and palpable. They knew CC wasn't coming back. They lied to us and played us for fools so the Fever won't lose viewership. At first, it sounded like the heartbroken rage of a betrayed fan base. But the more you dig, the more you realize they were right. This wasn't paranoia, it was pattern recognition. They kept the charade going for months. They knew she was the draw, so they kept promoting her presence at arenas. Knowing full well she would be on the bench in street clothes, fans planned expensive trips, bought non-refundable plane tickets and hotel rooms, all banking on the vague promises fed to them by the organization. They were selling tickets not to a basketball game, but to a mirage. And the deception wasn't just coming from the team. It felt coordinated, almost systemic, which is why it wasn't surprising when a voice as loud as Skip Bayless floated a shocking theory that the WNBA itself was withholding vital information about Clark's true condition, preferring to keep everyone in the dark to maintain interest. He was hinting at a cover-up that went all the way to the top. And what happens when the truth finally becomes unavoidable? When there are only a handful of games left and the lie is stretched to its breaking point? That's when the PR machine kicks into high gear. Indiana Fever GM Amber Cox released a statement praising Clark as a great teammate and insisting that her long-term health was the priority. It was a masterpiece of corporate deflection. It was designed to make them look like the good guys, the responsible guardians of a precious asset. But the fans saw right through it. The statement ignited a firestorm of fury. The people who had spent their money and emotional energy felt utterly betrayed. Social media erupted with demands that the front office need to be held accountable for misleading them all season, because it was never about her long-term health. If it were, they would have been honest from the start. It was about their short-term profits.
Caitlin Clark is out for the rest of the WNBA season. She had posted this whole statement on Instagram as well as the Fever officially announcing it just now here on this Thursday evening. And there have been some talks about from the Fever staff about her potentially trying to come back, and they had kind of been trying to drag this out as much as possible over the course of this season, but there simply seems to just not be enough time in this season for them to fully feel comfortable in getting her healthy. And the message that has been sent has always been the most important thing is her long-term health.
Drag this out as much as possible. Listen to those words. That isn't a medical strategy, it's a marketing strategy. It's the language of a group that is stalling for time, milking every last dollar out of a situation before they are forced to admit the truth. They weren't waiting for her body to heal, they were waiting for the regular season to end, for the ticket revenue to be secured. And while this cynical corporate game was being played in boardrooms and press rooms, a 23-year-old woman was putting her body and soul through hell, believing she could make it back. While they were allegedly planning how to spin the inevitable, she was fighting a battle they may have already decided she would lose. Listen to the pain in her own words. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. This is the human cost of their deception. While the organization was allegedly focused on managing public perception and ticket sales, she was focused on one thing: getting back to the game she loves, for the fans she felt she was letting down. Was she a part of the deception, or was she just another victim of it? Was she forced to play along, or was she kept in the dark too, fed the same false hope as the rest of us? The most heartbreaking possibility is that they used her own fighting spirit against her. They watched her pour everything into her rehab, knowing it was the perfect cover story. Her genuine effort made their lie believable. They weren't just stringing along the fans, they were exploiting the heart of a champion. This brings us back to the conversation that changes everything. The one that exposes this not as a series of unfortunate events, but as a deliberate, coordinated conspiracy.
Oh, here we are. The next morning after it was announced that Caitlin Clark would not be returning this season, something that I think most of us pretty much knew for maybe at least the last couple of weeks. I heavily suspected it for the last, if I'm being real, last month. Although I kept kind of holding out hope because, well, I wanted a reason to keep watching these games. And that's why the Indiana Fever has gotten dogged out as a conversation and a agreement that would have happened between the Fever organization and I assume Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA. We don't want to mess these ratings up now. We don't want to mess those ratings up now, do we? Let's make it look like she's going to come back. So I knew there was going to be a lot of reaction today and last night, overnight. And Amber Cox, the CEO and general manager for the Fever, has released a statement on Twitter X. And it has gotten quite the response from Caitlin Clark fans.
A conversation in an agreement that would have happened between the Fever organization and Kathy Engelbert in the WNBA. Katos. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a team trying to handle a difficult situation. This was an alleged back-channel deal with the highest levels of the league. The objective was clear and unabashedly cynical. We don't want to mess these ratings up now, do we? Let's just make it look like she's going to come back. This is the smoking gun. This is the truth behind the vague updates, the hollow PR statements, and the months of false hope. It was a calculated deception, a scheme born of financial panic, orchestrated from the very top. They saw the numbers, they saw the cliff they were about to fall off, and they decided to build a phantom bridge out of Caitlin Clark's reputation and the fans' loyalty. They gambled that your love for her was strong enough to blind you to their lies, and for a while, it worked. But the truth has a way of getting out. The fans' anger is justified. Their feeling of betrayal is real. They weren't just watching a sports drama unfold. They were the unwilling cast members in a corporate con job. They are demanding refunds. And more than that, they are demanding accountability. They exposed the lie. But now, it raises an even more terrifying question. If they were willing to orchestrate such an elaborate deception over this injury, what else are they hiding? This entire season has been plagued by controversy surrounding Clark. We've all seen the questionable non-calls, the brutal physicality she's endured, and the whispers of systemic harassment on the court. We've seen the fan theories about referees being told to swallow their whistles, with some even claiming leaked audio proves a bias coming from the commissioner's office itself. Is it possible that this injury wasn't just an unfortunate accident they decided to exploit? Could it be the predictable result of a league that refused to protect its biggest star? A league that, as some fans have claimed, resents her popularity and mainstream appeal? They faked her comeback to save their ratings. They treated her like a product, not a person. The question now is, what happens next? What happens when the anger fades and the financial reality sinks in again? The lie is exposed, but the motive, the greed, is still there. They showed you how far they're willing to go to protect their money. The story isn't over. In fact, it might have just begun. What happens when they decide they don't need her to come back at all?